Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup with Joe. On this episode, what will planting weather be like? Ben reveals the forecast. What do your wheat stands look like? Find out what Ben says to nurse your wheat back to health. Iowa and Minnesota EPA had a major announcement this week. Tune in to hear the details. What are the risks and rewards of early planting? Hear how to mitigate the risk of early planting and frost.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars, Turk and Ben, and let's talk about what happened this week. Ben, what did you come across?
We got temperature outlooks from our Merschman Seeds meteorologist that's talking about what April, May, June have a potential to look like. And from what we're looking at right now, it says that April has a 30 to 40% chance, so they're leaning on the slightly, on when they're looking at that 30 to 40% chance, they think that there's a slight chance that we're going to be slightly warmer in the month of April. And as you look into April, May, June, those 3 months combined, there's a 60 to 65% chance that we will be leaning into those warmer trending temperatures for that time frame. So that's leaning towards a earlier spring, potentially.
Remember last year in West Point, Iowa on April 20th, we had snow, so probably won't see that this year, huh?
Well, it's hard telling because
it's month late, Joe.
Right. So then when we look at the precipitation outlook from Blue Water, they're talking about for the month of April, it kind of looks like if you draw a line west of Des Moines, there's a slight chance for partially drier. When you look at the 3-month outlook, it kind of mirrors that, but a little bit higher chance of slightly drier from the Des Moines east. And you're looking at above normal precipitation for the Indiana, Ohio, eastern Illinois portion of stuff as well. So
wet east, dry west, huh?
Correct. Green up. If you haven't looked at the Blue Water outlook, it's always got a nice look at where green up's happening and where it's ahead versus behind. And in the south, in our Missouri footprint, it looks like things are greening up at about a 10 to 15% faster rate. You know, snow melt's happening. Things are really progressing on as we're seeing 60s and 70-degree temperatures this week.
Just driving home in Fort Madison, sandier soil, southerly exposure, grass is green on the south side of the houses down along Avenue A when I drove last night. So, things changed this week, definitely this week. Now, if the rain we're getting on Friday here, and if it's a warm rain, things are going to start popping.
Yep, so then that kind of leads us into the green up talk where we are at in our latitude. The wheat has definitely changed a lot in the past 3 to 4 days, so it's a good time to do evaluations and look at different potential changes that you can make to the wheat. I did get a few isolated incidences of some stand loss on some wheat in our southern territory where they would have had lower lying areas of the field had initially greened up because they had warmer temps. Then they got moisture and 0 degree or pretty close to 0 degree single digit temperatures that would have caused icing over, and there's going to be some spots of isolated winter kill is what we like to call that. And basically what happens is it starves the wheat for oxygen once it's greened up, and it can't handle that for more than a couple days at a time. So
yeah, definitely get out and look at your stands right now, because if you have a thin stand there, depending upon how big an area, there's some things you can do, right, Ben? What would you do if you had a thin stand of wheat?
If you have a thin stand, the best thing to do is get on top of it as fast as possible and try to get nitrate nitrogen applied to that plant so it's readily available so the roots can take it up, so it can increase, the last 10 to 15% of your tillering to try to make that fairly robust.
So get out, look at your stands, and then if your stand is unacceptable, then it gives you the opportunity to terminate the stand and then look to go to corn or soybeans or whatever it is, depending upon what your fertility that you've applied on it.
Yep, and wheat is just like soybeans in the fact that if it's a uniform thin stand, we can still raise 50, 60, 70 bushel wheat with that uniform stand. You may have taken the top 20 to 30 bushel off of it, but if it's a uniform stand, I have a tendency to want to keep that with the price of where the wheat's at. You already have all your money in the seed, you have your money in your fertilizer and your nitrogen from last year. But the problem that we get with is when we start to see pockets and holes out in those fields, and the pockets and holes, even if it's a 3 foot by 3 foot area, if they're scattered around fairly often, you're going to struggle with weed control. You're going to not be able to cover that tillering. But if it's a fairly uniform thinner stand, we can still make good wheat with it.
So you can control weeds, which again give the opportunity for the wheat to tiller. So that would be a consideration too, is possible weed control on thin stands.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, Ben?
That's what I got for this week.
Turk?
The wheat's still worth taking care of. We took a little wheat money off the table with wheat this week, but it's still really, really good value, and it remains to be seen what our overall yields are going to be and what that end result's going to be for that wheat at this time. But I still think there's still opportunity for really high-priced wheat when the combines are rolling, and we'll know more here before long. But this dry weather is going to continue to keep the market on edge, and it's going to continue to not only wheat but corn and soybeans as well, because we need to grow a good crop this year. And so market seems to be focused on a lot of other things besides the weather right now, but that demand situation is still there, and that supply situation is still there, and so it's going to be still going to be something to keep an eye on. I did want to say that we talked about what the markets have done and the opportunity to price. If you haven't been paying attention, which I think most people have, but if you haven't been paying attention, the opportunity to sell that $6 corn off the combine was here, and I believe in most cases is still pretty darn close, because December corn right now is in the mid 640s, so depending on what your basis is, and that's December corn. So there's the opportunity is still around for that $6 off the combine. With in the case of soybeans, again, the opportunity was here for that $15 soybeans. It's backed off a little bit, off about $1 from its highs, but the opportunity was here to market that $15 soybeans as well. So I still think the market's not going to collapse here right away. There could be another $1 or more down in the markets, but I think it's coming back eventually here, because it's too early to say this crop is made for next year. If we get this dry spring and everybody gets everything put in perfectly, and we have timely rains, and that's going to be the key, is those timely rains, we could still grow a fantastic crop and have big yields. So
yeah. It's Ukraine is the wild card, because how much are they going to be able to produce, and how much are they going to be able to export? I mean, so that's a big chunk of the market already.
They're right
potentially
now,
missing.
Right now, what they're concerned about is the wheat has been planted in last fall, and right now they're just trying to get started. Are they going to be able to harvest it?
Yeah. Will they have fuel to do it?
Yeah. Will they have fuel? Will they have the ability to do it? So that's kind of weighing on the market right now. But the other big news this week is Iowa come out and announced the label change, or Iowa EPA come out and announced the label change for dicamba, and so they
for the states of Iowa and Minnesota.
And Iowa is restricted now to June 20th, and Minnesota, I believe, it's June 10th. And so
is there a temperature cutoff too?
And an 85-degree maximum temperature. So the frustrating part about it is that I put in for these changes last December, and we're just now hearing about them. So EPA continues to drag their feet, it seems like, in many cases here. But at least everybody knows where we're at right now, and it only affects soybeans, not corn. Right. So we still got to be very careful with that corn chemistry.
So thinking about, you cannot spray dicamba after June 20th or any day that it's 85 degrees. So realistically speaking, about 15th of May, if you have dicamba soybeans, you better have them planted. Otherwise, you're going to run out of window to spray dicamba.
Keep in mind, we just talked about above normal temperatures. Right. So that window may be shorter than that, Joe.
Good point. Speaking about that early planting, let's have a little bit of conversation about, I know what it's like, when you look out there, it's a warm, sunny day, ground's fit, but the calendar says it's way too early.
Mid-March frenzy.
Yeah, so that's going to happen. And it seems like it's happened the last few years that we've had this early warm spell and then we turn cold. So what are the risks for planting early? And what are the advantages of planting early? What would you say, Ben?
Oh, there's huge advantage to getting your crop planted early. I think that any time that you can get, I don't know if it's quite the rule of thumb, but any time that you can get a week earlier than your normal planting window, it seems to get you half of that time to make your flowering happen earlier than the June 20th date, the summer solstice date, when the day length starts to change. But so let's say that the average planting date or the insurance date for Iowa here is April 21st for soybeans. So if you're planting on April 1st, you're gaining an extra 7 days of flowering, which means more noding, which means you have more potential to set pods, and there's some definite advantage when you're looking at planting early. But you also have to remember that the average last frost of the season, or however you want to call that, is usually May 1st through the 15th. So we will always have some sort of frost event late April, early May. So you always got to weigh your risks against your rewards.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we can get, with the seed treatments we have and the seed quality and everything, we can get beans out of the ground in cold conditions. However, we can't protect them from frost, and that's the biggest risk. This is one of the things you have to remember. Farmers today have this huge equipment, bigger than the old 4 rows back in the day. So when you go out and plant, you are concentrating your risk when you go full speed. So if you decide, on April 10th, I'm going to plant as hard as I can, it might be the right decision or it could be totally wrong depending upon which side of the risk turns out. So just keep that in mind. With the big equipment, you're concentrating your risk, whereas if you spread your planting season out, you also spread your pollination season, you also spread your pod fill, your rainfall. So there is advantages both ways. And I can't tell you which is the right answer.
Right. Well, if you remember last year when we were talking about this, when it happened in May, the difference that our sales manager in Northeast Iowa saw compared to where we were within, a half a degree or a degree's difference for a matter of an hour to an hour and a half time frame. I mean, that's how close we were for some of these first week of April planted beans. I mean, if we would have been half a degree to a degree colder for another hour or two, it's the difference between replanting and not replanting.
Yeah, I would no matter what, I wouldn't plant my whole crop that early. I'd plant whatever risk you felt you could take, and I'd lean toward making sure that I had part of my crop planted in a more normal fashion or timely fashion, because again, that frost date, I mean, we've had the ground freeze an inch deep in the first part of May before actually killed corn that wasn't out of the ground yet, because it was germed, but it killed the germ in the ground because we froze an inch to an inch and a half deep, and that corn's dead. I mean, whenever you kill the growing point on corn, it is dead, and we killed corn that hadn't even emerged.
And it never does it uniform. That's the thing. If it was an on-off switch, it'd be easy, but you look at one part of the field and say, well, that don't look so bad. Well, depending upon how it lays, could have to be a little colder, a little warmer, and that makes it very frustrating. So, we have a saying here at our company too. Why is it that we have time to do it twice but don't have time to do it right the first time? But farming and weather, I mean, you never know.
So what are the two different things that you can do to mitigate that, what you're just talking about? You plant the soybeans. I'm not afraid of planting soybeans 2 inches deep. It puts them in the ground longer. It's going to, when you put them 2 inches deep and they're in that ground temp, if they start to grow, they're obviously going to imbibe the moisture. If it's warm enough, hopefully, that soil temp is at least 42, 43 degrees. So that bean is going to imbibe that moisture, and it can just sit. If the temperatures drop, that soybean can sit in the ground for 30 days, right? So let that soybean sit for as long as possible until it comes out, and you're potentially missing some of those light frosts, and also having another way to mitigate that risk is either to have strip till or full tillage. Conventional tillage is going to keep that ground warmer, because a lot of the areas that we saw that had replant issues last year were either in a no-till or minimum till style situations where that ground wasn't retaining the moisture that wasn't retaining the heat from the previous day.
Absolutely, good advice.
The longer that stuff sits in the ground, the more important that seed treatment becomes. Because don't try and do this with naked seed. If you're going to plant early, you got to have the very best seed treatment you could possibly get. That because the longer it sits there, the more opportunity the disease has to attack that seedling.
Underground insects too.
And the underground insects.
And then you also increase your probability of sudden death because that's when that infection occurs in cool, wet conditions. So that's why you need a good, solid Saltro product in that early planting window.
Need the full boat.
Need the full boat. You need everything you can to fight Mother Nature. So, anything else?
No, I think that'll do it.
Well, this week I did a little extra work on the corny jokes, so I think we might actually get you guys to smile this week, okay? All right, this one here is about a therapist and the patient, okay? And the therapist says to the patient, it's a guy, okay? You said you had a phobia about getting married. Do you know the symptoms? And the patient said, I can't say I do. Mm-hmm. Okay?
That'd be a problem.
That'd be a problem, wouldn't it? This one here is a sheepdog and his flock of sheep, okay? Sheepdog says to the sheep, I love my job. And the sheep say, all you do is boss us around all day. The sheepdog says, what did you say? And the sheep said, you heard me. You heard me? I got to start talking slower.
It took me a little bit, Joe.
All right. Now this one here is a little bit about life, you know. This is a knock-knock joke, okay? Knock-knock.
Who's there?
Opportunity.
Opportunity who?
Don't be silly. Opportunity only knocks once.
There you go.
So remember that.
Very true.
Very true. Anyhow, I guess I'm not doing any better than I normally do.
Yeah, I got to go slower, Joe.
I know, I got to talk slower. Anyhow, thanks again for tuning in and listening today. We appreciate your business a lot. And we hope that your family is healthy and safe and you have a great planting season, and we'll see you next week. Take care.